northeast of Knoxville, Tennessee, nestled in the rugged mountain terrain of southern Kentucky, lies Harlan County. It seemed that in this modern world, Harlan was a place still lost in time. Mules and horses were the main mode of transportation, and the road consisted of creek beds and weather-worn animal paths. No one had money. People would barter and trade goods for services rendered. G.C. Jones grew up in this world. He started work as a 9-year-old on the wagon train, importing goods from, quote, over the mountain, unquote, into Harlan. This included baked goods, honey hams, and more frequently, moonshine. The ban on alcohol had been a blessing for enterprising individuals who were not afraid to go above the law, and many made a killing on the illegal trade, at least for as long as it lasted. As more and more coal was being mined in the nearby hills, Harlan became a veritable boom town, and the usual problems of the company town and the company store reared their heads. Amongst the individualistic miners, the Union seemed an odd fit at first, and the government hoped ingrained hatred of unionism in the South was enough to dissuade miners from joining the UMWA, or the United Mine Workers of America, headed by the outspoken John L. Lewis. As the Great Depression began to affect Kentucky's coal mines, operators deemed a 10% pay cut was necessary to keep the business running. On top of the operating costs miners incurred, this pay cut would leave those employed with almost nothing. Thousands struck in 1931 to preserve their meager wages and tonnage rates. Sheriff J.H. Blair was completely in the pocket of the coal executives, and his reign of terror on the pro-union citizenry of Harlan was brazen and barbaric. Florence Reese recalled, quote, J.H. Blair and his men came to our house in search of Sam. That's my husband. He was one of the union leaders. I was home alone with our 7 children. They ransacked the whole house, and they kept watch outside, waiting to shoot Sam down when he came back, unquote. Thankfully, Sam did not return home that night, and the sheriff and his men departed, leaving Florence shaken but unharmed. As a form of retaliation, she wrote a song, which has now become famous. Which Side Are You On? Sets a vivid scene right away. Quote, They say in Harlan County, there are no neutrals there. Either you're a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair, unquote. The song ends emphatically, quote, Don't scab for the bosses. Don't listen to their lies. 'Cause poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize, unquote. G.C. Jones recounts similar treatment in his book, Growing Up Hard in Harlan County. Quote, These men would get a few days of briefing and then, in pairs, would be sent to coal camps to beat and pistol whip miners if they refused to work in the mines. The deputies were hired by the hundreds by the new sheriff. Then the mine owners would move them into a nice big company house and give them a new fast car, unquote. Greased up and convinced they were going after Red Russians, the deputies began a true purge of Unionists. Jones continues, quote, One would dash to the rear of the house. The other, rushing to the front, would crash the flimsy door in. The woman would start pleading for them not to hurt her husband, that she would get him to go back to work in the mines, or that they would leave the camp. The other camp boss would be guarding the rear of the house. If the husband or father should attempt to escape through the rear, he would be blasted with shots from the guard's shotgun, unquote. Claiming they were stopping a break-in, deputies were never questioned or charged with any of these murders, the number of which still remains unknown. In this climate, it's little wonder miners began arming themselves and taking to the hills in marauding bands for protection. The mine owners seemingly had much to fear. By the end of bloody Harlan, 5 mine officials, guards, and deputies would be dead, killed by armed miner bullets. Things took a turn for the worst when Kentucky's governor called in federal troops. G.C. Jones says, quote, that if the women refused their sexual advances or reported the men to their commanding officer, they would have deputies take their fathers or husbands for a ride over the mountain on a one-way trip, unquote. Those forced into work down in the mines eventually found out about these abuses and rapes, and they rightly rebelled. In spite of their often violent resistance, their initial attempts at Union recognition were rebuked by Big Coal. With the passage of several key bills in Washington, organizing became much more effective, and yellow dog contracts were outlawed across America. In Harlan County, these reforms were resisted bitterly by coal operators. The Unionists rallied around several key members of the Harlan community. One of them was G.C. Jones, who relayed messages between miners and Union officials. Local mine owner Mr. Burnett spoke directly with Jones about what could happen if the miners refused to return to work. He claimed John Lewis would use Union dues to support industry in Soviet Russia. Jones responded, quote, we intend to stay on a peaceful strike as long as it takes for you and others like you to recognize their employees and sign a contract that will be drawn up with them and our parent union, unquote. Jones then demanded an end to the reign of terror of hired thugs, an end to all scab work, and $1 a day to all the men on strike from the company as a gesture of goodwill. Jones then offered to allow a team of Union men to work pumps so as to keep the mines from overflowing, and he left. For a time, the big coal mines in the area seemed about to break, but more money and influence was injected into their counter-offensive. Bringing in motorized federal infantry to quell riotous miners, this unit set about initiating martial law in Harlan County once more. One night, armed men came for Jones. 5 heavily armed men burst through the front door, while another 4 slipped around the back in wait. Jones awoke to a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun, several submachine guns, and a pistol pointing at his face. They dragged him into a Buick and dropped him off by the bookkeeper's office. Once here, he was presented with, quote, a sheet of blank paper and a pencil. The captain then handed me another sheet with a message on it. He told me to read it good and then print it on the other page, word for word. I shook my head and asked, what in the hell are you trying to do to me? If you intend to take me over the mountain, you might as well get started, for I am not going to print this note, and I'm sure as hell not going to sign my name to any damn thing, unquote. He was lambasted by all present, save the captain. They called him a goddamn Russian redneck and a Union bastard. A guard went to hit Jones over the back of the head, but the captain called his dogs off, saying, quote, you know you can't do this with all these people around. Take him back home and wait for another chance, unquote. Returning home to a petrified wife, he looked across the street to a near-identical scene playing out. A long-time friend was being crammed into a car by force. All the while, Union men were going deep undercover, being hired as guards and gathering incriminating evidence. Even some state military officers were on the side of the Union and testified against the coal operators who employed them. They presented evidence of the company's wrongdoing to sympathetic congressmen in Washington. Many of the armed thugs were fired, the sheriff was removed from office, and some operators even faced criminal charges. In all, it was a supreme victory for Harlan County coal miners. G.C. Jones went on to serve in the Merchant Marine Force at the height of World War II and took part in naval battles off the coast of Cherbourg, France, and Antwerp, Belgium. labor animosity would not cease in Harlan County. In the 1970s, miners once again struck for union representation. After a 13-month-long work action, they voted overwhelmingly for a union. Today, the coal industry in Harlan County employs fewer than 400 non-union miners, where once tens of thousands toiled under the earth. In recent years, the decline in the mining industry has led to a decreasing population, fewer economic opportunities, and poverty across Harlan County. Many miners are unemployed due to the government's response to climate change affecting the industry. This is not without cause. Coal releases more carbon dioxide into the air than any other fossil fuel. With that in mind, I think the first people who should be considered for green energy jobs should be those who lost work due to the ineptitude of those in charge, who were unwilling to change before it was too late. These miners worked for so long in dangerous, unhealthy, and dirty conditions, and now have less than nothing to show for it. The situation was so bad that in 2019, miners and their families blocked trains filled with coal, which had been removed from the ground using their unpaid labor. The only mining company in the area went bankrupt, but they kept delaying wages and making empty promises until they had no money to pay their workers. The union had long been purged from Kentucky. Not a single union miner remained, so no one could stand up for the miners who were being bamboozled. The police were ordered to clear the miners and their families from the tracks so their labor could be stolen by the government. This is unacceptable, and the meager restitution they were given by the new mining company was nothing compared to how much they lost in real wages doing unpaid work.